Hi Stefaan, thank you for meeting with me today. As part of the International Facilitation Week, we are interviewing learning professionals such as yourself to get some insights into what inspires you, to get to know a little bit more about your experience. So there are a few questions that I'll be asking you, and it'll be great to hear from you, your thoughts.
It's an honor. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. All right, so my first question would be, in India, facilitation is at a nascent stage. What can we do to seamlessly switch from the typical classroom training to facilitation?
Okay, I think it's a very relevant question, not only for India but for many countries. We're coming since the Industrial Revolution pretty much where training started and classes started. We have been very much in ascending mode, a little bit Cartesian. You open people's skulls and you put something in and you close them in a very production type of a paradigm, and then you hope as soon as the skulls get closed that kids going to school and corporates going to join training classes suddenly remember and magically start acting differently. We've already known for 150 years that this doesn't work. I think training is much more of a function of sending. Somebody, I have the knowledge, nobody has that knowledge, I'm going to send my knowledge to people. That doesn't work. That works in pedagogy, that doesn't work in adult education. In adult education you need people who are motivated, who are keen, who can use this on the spot, who often have an own idea that might contradict whatever the sender is giving you. So for kids you can get away with it, for adults not really. So for adults you really have to start thinking differently, and facilitation is one approach to start doing things differently. Because for me a trainer is a sender and a facilitator is more of a receiver. He's kind of guiding the process. Doesn't have to be a specialist on a specific area, but is helping people to self-discover areas of need, areas of learning. But coaching also works, and mentoring also works, and letting people fall on their faces also works. And facilitation is one of those new areas that can help us. Also in India, I see a very traditionalist approach to learning. Everybody was talking about learning, but in fact we mean training. We mean sending. We mean opening skulls and fill them up with knowledge. So that's probably my 2 cents on this question.
No, that's great. But so just following up on that question, what do you think makes this learning experience so successful?
Well, any learning experience that's successful is something that appeals to me. Something where I, as an individual, can learn something that gives me. So often facilitators and trainers also, they think from their own perspective, and that's always wrong, because in the room you might have a group of 5, 25, 250, doesn't really matter, people, and guess what? Every person is different. Every person has a different age, a different desire, a different reason why they're there, a different background, a different path towards that day that they're sitting in your class. And what constructivism has taught us is that people basically, they take away from your facilitation or from your training which fits them at that moment. That's probably the message I'd give you on this question.
No,
do you want me to elaborate? Is it fine?
Yeah, because the next question I'm going to ask you is related to this again. How do you go about creating that trust and the engagement for your participants? Because the learning will definitely happen, but how do they trust you? How do you engage them?
I think it's a very good question. It's hard for a trainer to become a facilitator and vice versa. It's a different type of skills. I would also probably add to that A third different skill is online facilitation, which is a much more scalable thing. And yet that online facilitation is yet a different skills from facilitation in general. How to create this, I think you have to be pretty darn mature to do this. You have to have been in business, in life in general, in order to be able to deal with the people that are in front of you. You probably have to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of people in terms of experience levels. I'm not saying that you have to be a PhD on whatever you don't have to be a PhD in leadership to be able to do leadership stuff. But you need that credibility, done it, seen it type of credibility, and you also need that general maturity. I'm standing in life, I'm confident, and it has nothing to do with presentation skills. It has to do with, am I grounded? Have I lived enough? Because otherwise you can't be really a good facilitator, I think.
That is correct. But then how do you create that engagement when you're with your participants?
Well, of course, you have to be damn good at what you're doing. I hate facilitators who try to wing it. You need to be prepared, like, it's like, compare it a little bit to theater people. They spend hundreds of hours memorizing their scripts. And then once you see them on stage, they come across as if they're speaking these words for the first time. I think deep preparation, deep engagement with your subject matter, with whatever you want to drive. There was a saying that trainers need to know 10 times better than their subjects, their subject matter. Same with facilitators, I think. You need to know damn good what you're talking about, and preparation is really hard. And if you do that really well, and you're good in your general people behavior and kind of your core facilitation skills, then you have that credibility quite naturally.
That's very good advice. So do you think there are any certifications that people would be looking at? Because you did mention the word credibility, right? So are there any certifications that organizations typically look for in a facilitator?
No, I think facilitators is a very nascent field. The majority of companies are looking more for content transfer. They're looking more for trainers. And if you can jump from this train, or you can have this job with a company, let's say if you're a vendor, and if you can kind of upgrade the training piece with facilitation, that works like dynamite. I think few companies are yet engaging facilitators just for facilitating skills. They're always asking for some kind of content specialization. Does that cover the question?
Kind of, yes.
Give me some more.
So basically, what I wanted to ask you, another question was that, what was the last book or article that you read, and why it inspired you, how it inspired you?
Well, there's a couple of things, and I will expand this. One is one recent, it's not that recent, but a TED Talk.
Yes.
That I saw, that basically the learning preferences, some pseudo research being done by Dunn quite a while ago, and that's kind of a myth in the learning fraternity, that learning styles are valid. In fact, they're completely bogus. There is not something that I'm an auditive learner or I'm a visual learner. It's all bollocks. So I knew that already, but I recently looked at that TED video, and I think that was a nice eye-opening moment. Another book that I read recently, sorry, going to be a year ago or so, is a book by Jane Hart, Modern Workplace Learning.
What is the title again?
Modern Workplace Learning. It's basically moving the paradigm around training, learning towards a much more holistic approach of about 10% only what people learn is done in a classroom through facilitation or training or whatever instructional designed methodology, and 90% is learned through other ways. Falling on your face, reflecting under the shower, sitting in a traffic jam here in Bangalore, and reflecting on your day. That's how you learn. Talking to people, asking your neighbor, and that's it's a challenge for all corporate learning groups to actually start to embrace that. 100% of budgets are typically spent on this 10%, while we should think outside of it. And I guess facilitation is the first step out on the training side, but there's many more things that you can do. And then another book is completely different. One I finished this weekend is a book which was written in 1835 and 1840 by Alexis de Tocqueville on democracy in America. And this talks about the American psyche, and actually it's still quite similar nowadays than it was 100 many years ago. But what struck me is that the word individualism was actually only launched then, in the 1840s. Before that, nobody ever spoke about individualism. And it was all about collectivism. I'm part of a religion, I'm part of a city, I'm part of a family, and your individual being was secondary, and we didn't even have a word for it. And coming in humanism and in humanity in the 16th, 17th, 18th century suddenly changed all of that. And you see that back in our learning now. When our trainings started in the 1840s, 1850s also, in the Industrial Revolution, the notion was indeed collectivist. One trainer can train hundreds of people. Now individualism has grown in the 21st century, and look at millennials. They're all about me. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's about individualism. I want something. I don't want to have a facilitator doing a facilitation for 60 people. That's fine, but I as an individual want to get something out of it. And for me that was a revelation a little bit, that how young the notion of individuality is. And also has clear repercussions and consequences for learning and facilitation.
I think that's great, because the way you drew the analogy between the two different eras and how it is still so relevant in terms of then and now, and how it relates to training, I think that's brilliant. So my next question to you would be, who's your favorite facilitator? Like, do you have one, somebody who inspired you?
Well, I have to go way back. In my current role, I don't do enough facilitation anymore. I love it. I think a great facilitator for me was actually a combination of facilitator cum trainer. That was Stephen Covey. I think he had what I mentioned earlier, this maturity, this having lived a life, this stage presence. He had lots of great storytelling to basically inspire people towards ideas, towards action, towards things that could move you. I think I did lots of those sessions myself as a master trainer in previous companies. But that was a person that springs immediately to mind.
Yeah, I've seen a few videos myself, and I think it was brilliant. The way he without saying it, the message that he delivered was so powerful.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. He was a brilliant facilitator. So do you have any advice for the new facilitators? What should they be doing that will set them apart?
I probably, if you want to accelerate your groundedness in life, read up on as much as you can. Great minds, they study about 5 hours per week on dedicated stuff. That's what you have to do. You have to grow yourself in an exponential way. You have to read like crazy. You have to learn. Be a sponge. Get knowledge to you, and not superficial knowledge, but also read about history, read about company stuff, read about many different things, and become an all-rounder. Try to find some people who really inspire you. Try to learn from them. It's amazing how easy people are accessible. People don't realize this, and just go up to them and ask them how they've done whatever they're good at. So learn from people. I'd say that's really important. And probably the last thing is just have fun. People that you're working with, they want to have fun. The more people are smiling, the more you learn. And there's kind of research proving that. So the more fun you have, I'm sure the more your customers will have fun.
That's true.
Good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stefan. Really appreciate it. Thank you.